May 16th, 1940. Stonne, France. A German panzer commander watches a single French tank roll into his position. He's not worried. His Panzer IIIs and IVs have destroyed dozens of French tanks already. This campaign has been easy. French armour is obsolete, poorly used. This will be another quick kill. He orders his tanks to fire. They hit it, multiple times. The shells bounce off. All of them. And then the French tank starts shooting back, and his panzers start exploding. He realizes this isn't a normal French tank, and his unit is about to be destroyed. If you're into military history deep dives like this, subscribe. We've got way more stories coming. The fall of France in 1940 is remembered as a disaster. 6 weeks. That's how long it took Germany to defeat France. The French army, supposedly one of the strongest in Europe, collapsed. French tanks were captured by the hundreds, used by Germany for the rest of the war. The narrative is simple. German armour was superior. German tactics were better. Blitzkrieg overwhelmed outdated French doctrine. The French never had a chance. But that narrative is incomplete, because France had one tank that terrified German forces when they encountered it. One tank that German anti-tank weapons couldn't penetrate. One tank that, in the hands of skilled crews, could destroy entire German formations single-handedly. The Char B1 bis. And when German troops faced it, they learned that French engineering was far from obsolete. It was ahead of anything Germany had. The problem wasn't the tank, it was how France used it. The B1 bis was designed in the 1930s. France learned lessons from World War I. They wanted a tank that could do everything. Break through fortifications, support infantry, fight other tanks. One vehicle for all roles. The result was a monster, 32 tons, armour up to 60mm thick, thicker than any German tank in 1940, 2 guns, a 75mm hull-mounted howitzer and a 47mm turret gun. The 47mm could penetrate any German tank. The 75mm could destroy fortifications. It looked strange, boxy. The hull gun pointed forward only, limited traverse. The design seemed dated, but the armour was incredible. The firepower was devastating. Germany had nothing comparable. The Panzer III had 30 minutes of armour maximum. The Panzer IV wasn't much better. German anti-tank guns were 37mm. Adequate against light tanks. Useless against the B1 bis. If France had used the B1 bis correctly, concentrated in armoured divisions, used aggressively, supported properly, the 1940 campaign could have been very different. But French doctrine scattered them. Small groups, penny-packeted across the front, supporting infantry instead of operating independently. Still, when B1 bis tanks encountered German forces, the results were shocking. For both sides. German forces entering France in May 1940 are confident. They've studied French equipment. They know French tanks are slower, less mobile, poorly coordinated. The Panzer divisions are faster, more aggressive, better led. Then the 1st Panzer units encounter B1 bis tanks, and something unexpected happens. The German tanks fire, score hits. The French tank doesn't stop, doesn't even slow down. The shells are bouncing off. German tank crews have never experienced this. Every tank they've faced, Polish, French light tanks, could be penetrated by their guns. But not this one. This is different. This is a problem. The B1 bis's armour protection was revolutionary for 1940. The front was 60mm thick, cast armour, curved, sloped in some areas. This wasn't just thickness, it was design. Shells would hit at angles, deflect. Even when they didn't deflect, penetrating 60mm of cast armour required firepower Germany didn't have in its tanks. The Panzer III's 37mm gun could penetrate about 30mm of armour at combat ranges. The Panzer IV's short 75mm was even worse against armor, designed for infantry support, not tank combat. Neither could reliably penetrate a B-1 bis from the front or the sides. The armor was too thick. German anti-tank guns, the standard 37mm PaK-36, were equally useless. German soldiers called it the door knocker, because that's all it did against heavy armor. Make noise. No penetration. The only German weapon that worked was the 88mm flak gun, originally an anti-aircraft gun. Heavy, difficult to position quickly, but it could penetrate the B-1 bis from the front, at range. This became the solution, but it wasn't available everywhere, and positioning an 88 under fire was dangerous. The B-1 bis's armor effectively made it invulnerable to standard German anti-tank weapons. In 1940, encountering one was like encountering a modern tank with World War I equipment. Nothing worked. May 15th, 1940. Flavian. A French unit with several B-1 BS tanks encounters German panzers. This is one of the first major engagements. The German tanks open fire. Standard tactics. Shoot first. Mobility and firepower win battles. They score multiple hits on the B-1 bis tanks. The French tanks don't stop, don't retreat. They keep advancing. The French return fire. The 47mm guns are accurate, deadly. German panzers start brewing up. The crews are panicking. Their shells aren't working, but the French shells are penetrating their armor easily. One B-1 bis, commanded by Captain Pierre Bilot, charges into the German formation. His tank is hit over 140 times, 140 hits. None penetrate. The armor holds. Meanwhile, Bilot destroys 13 German tanks. 13. In one engagement, the German formation breaks, retreats. They're not prepared for this. Their training didn't cover invulnerable enemy tanks. They don't have the weapons to fight it, so they run. This should have been a template. This should have shown what the B-1 bis could do. But French command doesn't capitalize, doesn't concentrate B-1 bis units, doesn't give them the fuel and support they need. The opportunity is wasted. There's an account from a German panzer commander named Otto Carius. He later became famous for commanding Tiger tanks, but in 1940 he was in a Panzer 38T, a light tank, barely adequate against French light tanks, completely hopeless against a B-1 bis. Carius described encountering a B-1 bis near Stonne. His platoon was in position, watching a road. A massive tank appeared, bigger than anything he'd seen. Boxy, slow-moving, but intimidating. His platoon fired, all 4 tanks, multiple hits. The French tank didn't react, kept moving. Then it rotated its turret, fired once. One of Carius's platoon mates exploded, ammunition cooking off. Carius ordered retreat. Immediately, his 37mm gun was useless. Staying was suicide. His platoon withdrew, left the area. The B-1 BIS didn't pursue, just continued its mission. Carius said that moment changed how he thought about armor. He'd assumed German tanks were superior, better designed, better made. Facing the B-1 BIS proved him wrong. France had better tanks. Germany just had better tactics and more of them. German forces encountering B-1 BIS tanks develop emergency tactics, improvised solutions, because standard doctrine doesn't work. First solution, avoid them. If you see a B-1 bis, don't engage. Call for air support. Call for 88mm guns. Wait for something that can actually kill it. Don't waste ammunition shooting at invulnerable armor. Second solution, target the tracks. You can't penetrate the armor, but you can disable the tank. Immobilize it. Make it a stationary target. Then you can maneuver around it, attack from behind where the armor is thinner, or wait for heavy weapons. Third solution, close assault. Get infantry close with explosives or flamethrowers. The B-1 BIS has limited visibility, poor situational awareness. If you can get close without being seen, you can disable it. Dangerous, high casualties, but it works. These tactics help, but they're desperate measures, workarounds, not real solutions. The fundamental problem remains. Germany doesn't have weapons that can reliably kill B-1 BIS tanks in direct combat. But the B-1 BIS had one critical flaw, one weakness that made it far less effective than it should have been. A flaw so significant that it negated many of its advantages. It wasn't the armor, wasn't the firepower. It was something about how the tank was designed, about how the crew operated. Something that German forces learned to exploit when they couldn't defeat it any other way. The one-man turret. The B-1 BIS's turret was operated by one person, the commander. He had to command the tank, operate the radio, load the 47mm gun, aim it, and fire it, all by himself, while also coordinating with the hull gunner who operated the 75mm. This was overwhelming, impossible to do effectively in combat. The commander would be focused on one task: loading. Couldn't watch for threats. Aiming. Couldn't communicate. Fighting. Couldn't command. German tanks had three-man turrets by comparison: commander, gunner, loader, division of labor. The commander could focus on tactics. The gunner could focus on aiming. The loader kept them supplied with ammunition. Much more efficient. This meant B-1 BIS tanks were slower to acquire targets, slower to fire, less aware of their surroundings. A German panzer might not penetrate a B-1 BIS, but it could maneuver around it, hit it from multiple angles, confuse the commander who was already overloaded. If the B-1 BIS had been designed with a three-man turret, it would have been even more devastating. But French doctrine in the 1930s emphasized economy. One man per station. This saved weight, saved space, but killed combat effectiveness. There are some B-1 BIS engagements that became legendary, moments that showed what the tank could do with a good crew and proper support. May 16th, 1940. Stonne. This village changed hands 17 times in one day. The heaviest fighting of the 1940 campaign. French and German forces battling for a key position. A single B-1 BIS, commanded by Lieutenant Jean-Pierre Bourges, enters the village. German infantry are everywhere. Anti-tank guns, panzers, dug in positions. Bourges decides to attack anyway, alone. His B-1 BIS rolls through Stonne, firing the 75mm at buildings, the 47mm at vehicles, machine guns at infantry. The Germans hit him repeatedly. Anti-tank rounds, Panzerfaust explosives. Nothing penetrates. Bourges destroys 2 Panzer IIIs. Several anti-tank guns, multiple trucks and support vehicles. He's in the village for over an hour, moving between positions, engaging targets. The Germans can't stop him. Finally, his tank runs out of ammunition. All guns empty. He withdraws. The tank is covered in impact marks, gouges in the armor, but no penetrations. The crew is unhurt. Mission accomplished. The Germans recapture Stonne later that day, but they're shaken. One tank held an entire village, destroyed numerous vehicles, against overwhelming numbers. If France had more B-1 BIS, if they were used aggressively, could Germany even win this campaign? France had about 350 B-1 and B-1 BIS tanks at the start of the war. Not a huge number, but concentrated properly, enough to make a difference. In actual combat, B-1 BIS tanks achieved impressive kill ratios. When they engaged German armor, they usually won, sometimes dramatically. Individual tanks destroying 5, 10, even 20 German vehicles in single engagements. But they also broke down frequently. Mechanical reliability was poor. The complex design meant more things could go wrong. Fuel consumption was enormous. Range was limited. Without proper logistics support, B-1 BIS tanks would run out of fuel or break down before accomplishing their missions. By June 1940, most B-1 BIS tanks were abandoned, not destroyed in combat. Abandoned due to mechanical failure or lack of fuel. German forces captured hundreds. They used them for the rest of the war, in France, in the Soviet Union. Even small numbers were still effective, still feared. There's one B-1 BIS engagement that stands out above all others. One tank, one crew, against impossible odds, where everything should have gone wrong, where German forces had every advantage, but through crew skill, mechanical reliability, and sheer aggressive tactics, the B-1 BIS won. In a way that became legendary in both French and German accounts. May 28, 1940. Northern France. A B-1 BIS designated Ur is part of a retreating French unit. The retreat is chaotic. Units scattered. Supply lines broken. Most tanks have been abandoned. But Uri's crew refuses to quit. They encounter a German roadblock. 3 Panzer IIIs, infantry, anti-tank guns, blocking the only road. The French are trapped. The logical decision is surrender. The Germans have them surrounded. Ur's commander, Sous-Lieutenant Beaulieu, decides to attack instead, charge straight through, break the roadblock, lead his unit to safety. His crew thinks he's insane, but they follow orders. They attack. The German panzers fire, score hits, the shells bounce off. Ur keeps coming, firing both guns. The 75mm destroys one panzer. The 47mm hits another. Both German tanks are disabled. The 3rd Panzer tries to maneuver. Get a flank shot. Ur rotates to face it. Fires. Hit. The 3rd Panzer is knocked out. German infantry with anti-tank rifles fire. Useless. The armor is too thick. Ur's machine guns sweep the roadblock. German infantry scatters. Ur drives through the shattered roadblock. The French unit follows. They escape, link up with other French forces. The B-1 BIS saved them. Ur's armor had taken over 90 hits. 90. From tank guns, anti-tank rifles. Not one penetration. The tank was functional. The crew was unhurt. When they finally abandoned Ur days later, out of fuel, unable to retreat further, German forces examining the tank couldn't believe it survived. The impact marks covered the entire vehicle, but the armor held. Every time. Here's the critical question. If France had better tanks than Germany, why did they lose so badly? The answer is doctrine and logistics, not equipment. France had excellent tanks, but they used them wrong. French armor was divided into small groups, attached to infantry divisions, used for infantry support. This wasted their potential. The B-1 BIS could break through German lines, could operate independently, could cause chaos in German rear areas. But French doctrine kept them tied to slow-moving infantry. German armor was concentrated, panzer divisions, operating independently, deep penetrations, encirclement, speed and aggression. Even though French tanks were better individually, German tanks were used better tactically. Logistics was another killer. French supply lines collapsed quickly. B-1 BIS tanks were fuel-hungry, mechanically complex. Without fuel and spare parts, they became immobile fortresses, then abandoned wrecks. The B-1 BIS showed French engineering was world-class. But engineering doesn't win wars alone. Doctrine wins wars. Logistics wins wars. Coordination wins wars. France lost all three. After France surrendered, Germany captured over 160 B-1 BIS tanks. They were delighted. These tanks were better than anything Germany had. They immediately put them into service. German designations: Panzerkampfwagen, B2, 740F. The F meant French origin. They used them in occupation duties, security operations. Some were sent to the Eastern Front. In Soviet combat, the B-1 BIS performed well. Soviet anti-tank guns had the same problem German guns had in 1940. Couldn't penetrate the armor. Soviet tank crews learned to fear the captured French tanks, called them beasts. Germany even modified some, added better radios, better sights, fixed the one-man turret problem by adding a loader in some variants. The improvements made them even more effective. The irony is perfect. France's best tank, used improperly by France, became an effective weapon for Germany because Germany understood how to use armor properly. The lesson is clear: equipment matters, but doctrine matters more. The B-1 BIS influenced post-war tank design significantly. The concept of heavy armor, multiple weapons, infantry support capability, these became standard in later heavy tanks. The Soviet KV-1 and IS series showed B-1 BIS influence: heavy armor, powerful main gun, secondary weapons, designed for breakthrough operations. The lessons France learned in the 1930s applied by the Soviets in the 1940s. American and British heavy tank programs also studied the B-1 BIS. The British Churchill had similar design philosophy: heavy armor, multiple roles, infantry support, and anti-tank capability. The concept proved sound. The B-1 BIS's flaws were also instructive. The one-man turret was never repeated. Three-man turrets became standard. Crew workload became a design priority. Mechanical reliability became critical. Range and fuel efficiency became required specifications. The B-1 BIS proved that being the best tank doesn't guarantee victory. You need good tanks, yes, but you also need good tactics, good logistics, good doctrine, good leadership. France had the tanks. Germany had everything else. Remember that German panzer commander from the beginning, the one watching a B-1 BIS roll into his position, the one who thought it would be an easy kill. His name was Hauptmann Friedrich Karl von Steinkeller. His unit was positioned outside Stone. They'd been successful all campaign, multiple kills, high confidence. When the B-1 BIS appeared, von Steinkeller followed doctrine. Engaged immediately. His tanks fired, multiple hits. He watched the shells impact, expected to see the French tanks stop, brew up, the crew bailing out. Instead, the shells bounced off, all of them. The French tank kept advancing, rotated its turret, fired. Von Steinkeller's command tank was hit by the 47mm gun, penetrating hit. His gunner was killed instantly. The loader was wounded. Von Steinkeller bailed out, watched his tank burn. The B-1 BIS destroyed 3 more panzers in his unit. The survivors withdrew, retreated from a single French tank, something that wasn't supposed to happen. German armor was superior. Everyone said so. Von Steinkeller survived the war, wrote about his experiences, always mentioned the B-1 BIS, said it was the best tank he faced in 1940, better than anything Germany had. He couldn't understand why France lost with equipment like that. The answer, he later realized, was that equipment alone doesn't win wars. France had better tanks. Germany had better doctrine. And doctrine beat technology. One tank, better armor than anything Germany had, better firepower, could destroy German tanks with ease, could survive anything German weapons fired at it, but still on the losing side. That's the story of the B-1 BIS.